friends, and thanks for joining me again. And I recently got a viewer on my channel who was like, oh well, I don't need to budget because I have a pretty good income. And I kind of had to chuckle to myself, but I realized that there is definitely some people out there who think that maybe budgeting isn't for them. And just to be clear, there are people who have higher incomes that do budget and higher incomes that don't budget, and people who are on the lower income scheme that budget, and there are people on the lower income, scale that don't budget. So there's definitely people who budget and don't budget on all sides. But I want to just go into really quickly who I think budgeting should be for. Really quickly, budgeting is just a plan for how you're going to spend your money. It's mainly just sort of a roadmap to say, here's what we're going to set aside for bills, and then here's how much we're going to spend, and this is how much we're going to spend on this or that, so that you're not shorted on things. You're not going to spend all the money and then realize there are these bills off to the side here, and you're not going to spend a bunch at the grocery store but then realize you needed gas. It's really just about allocating certain amounts of money for certain categories so that we don't end up short in other areas, and it helps make sure that we are looking to all of our goals and making sure that we're able to achieve them. So that's really what budgeting is. Now let's talk about who it's for. Anyone who has irregular bills, anyone who has bills come up that maybe don't come all the time. So say you had car insurance that's due every 6 months. It's pretty important that we budget for that because that could be a kind of a bigger expense. Or what about yearly taxes? Those only come once a year. We don't want to be like totally broke the month the month that those come along. So anyone who has any kind of irregular bill definitely needs to budget. Anyone who has bills that are large, again, kind of going along with those irregular bills, anyone who has a large bill. So like our property taxes probably surpass one of my husband's paychecks. So if we had a really large bill like that, we definitely need to be setting a little bit of money aside here and there, along the way, so that we're not taken off guard when that bill comes along and we aren't, again, scrambling to try to figure out how to live while we have this huge bill that came along. Number 3 would be just anybody who has bills, because if we're spending the money first, but then we have bills to pay after, there's definitely a problem there. So anyone who has bills probably should consider budgeting. This one's a big one for me, and this anybody who doesn't like to have ups and downs in their life. So they don't want to be paid, and then they like have this surplus where they feel rich, and then, or big bills that come along, and then they're like totally broke. And so if you kind of like to iron out the bumps in your life to where you're not like rich and poor all month long, this is definitely for you. Budgeting is definitely for anybody who doesn't want to have those kinds of highs and lows and would like more consistency in their life. Or people who just don't like being broke in general. I don't like being broke. I like having a little bit of assurance, knowing that if we had an emergency come up or something that we really needed to, if somebody got sick, we would be able to take care of that, whatever it is. I just don't like being broke because I feel like it really puts us into a bind in the event that we had something that we needed. So anybody who also doesn't want to be broke and screwed, budgeting is for you. Same with the thing I just mentioned before, if somebody were to get sick. I think budgeting is for anyone who has people that depend on you. Because if we are not as, smart with our money and we don't really budget the way that we should, and they have needs that we're not able to meet for them, our children or anybody you have that depends on you. Maybe you have an older parent or some other one, person. Anybody that, is depending on you needs you and I and all of us to be as, mature with our money and, as conscious as possible with it, to make sure that we're always going to have what we need when we need it and not be living in a house with no utilities because we let them get turned off, or no food because we spent it all on a bill, or whatever the case may be. Or if you just have other people in general, maybe even not somebody who depends on you, but like say a significant other. I honestly think that budgeting is important for people who have to budget together, because if one person wants to spend $100 a month on clothes and the other person wants to spend, $0 a month on clothes, there could be some discrepancy there. So we definitely need to be having a budget in place so that each person is staying within the bounds of what it is that they need, and that they're making sure that their needs and wants are being met, and that nobody is going off and being crazy with the money. Budgeting is for anybody who has debt that they want to get rid of, because budgeting is definitely necessary when it comes to trying to eliminate debt. If we get this big giant paycheck and we feel like we are, rich, and then we spend a ton of money, we're not going to be setting aside money to buy down that debt. So when we say, but we're going to set aside this much of our money to pay down the debt, and we're only going to live on that much, then we have to have that plan in place to make sure that we're buying down the debt the way that we want to and able to achieve our goals. And on that same note, it's for anybody who has any goals at all. If you want to travel, that's going to cost money. It's important to be setting money aside so that we can be able to meet those goals. Do you have a wedding that you want to plan? That's obviously going to cost some money, and it's not going to be probably a little bit of money, but maybe even a fair amount of money. So again, we're going to need to have that budget in place so that we're setting money aside for that. Do you have a vehicle you want to purchase? Do you have a house you want to buy? Do you want to put your kids through college? Anybody who has any kind of goals and or wants to retire and not be poor definitely needs to have a budget, because then we can be making sure that we are putting the money where it needs to go for our long-term goals and still making sure that we have what we need for our short-term goals. So quite honestly, I think budgeting is for everyone. I think anybody and everyone would benefit from having a budget. So you don't have to be broke or poor to budget. I honestly think everyone would benefit from having a budget. So anyway, hopefully this video was helpful to you. I'm Frugal Green Girl, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.